I'm very lucky to be joined by Judi today, who is the CEO of Tenovus. Hello, Judi, and thanks for kind of coming on here and taking the time to be interviewed by me today. So yeah, first of all, I think what's really good is to just tell us a little bit about Tenovus and the charity and who they are, and that would be a good way to kick it off.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to talk to you today. So, yes, Tenovus Cancer Care, to give us our full name. Yes, we were founded actually in 1943. So 80 years old this year. So it's
Wow,
quite a significant milestone for us.
amazing.
And we were founded by 10 Cardiff businessmen, hence the name 10 of us. And they came together because they wanted to do good things for people who needed good things done for them. So it started off as a real kind of a very general sort of charity, and then over the years it grew and it evolved, and became a very, very big and significant cancer research charity. And at that time, anyone who's ever been to the University of Hospital of Wales, if you look there, you'll see one of the buildings is still called the Tenovus Institute,
Oh, wow,
because that's where our scientists were, and they did some amazing work there, including early work on the breast cancer drug tamoxifen. And most people have heard of tamoxifen. It's been used by millions of women around the world, and is responsible for helping people to live long lives, although they have had breast cancer. So we're very proud to have that association. They also worked on a drug called Zoladex, which is for prostate cancer, which again has been used extensively. So a real strong sort of history and research. But then also over the years, we branched into doing a lot more around screening. And really, Tenovus Cancer Care was ahead of its time in taking mobile screening services into communities. And this was specifically in the 80s for women, for cervical screening. So, we were up there really, innovating even all those years ago. And I guess from there, we've really sort of grown. We now have 3 state-of-the-art mobile support units that deliver all sorts of cancer treatments, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, lymphedema treatments, right up and down the country. So we're still doing that closer to home thing. But we've also got a suite of services that we can provide that give people the practical and emotional support that they need when they first are faced with, the devastating news that they have cancer.
Yeah.
So, for example, we have benefits advisors, we have a team of counsellors, we have a nurse-led helpline, we have our amazing Sing With Us choirs. We have 16 Sing With Us choirs up and down the country. And obviously then we've got the work that we do around policy and influence. So we have developed something called an All Wales Cancer Community. So that's people around Wales who've been directly affected by cancer, who can tell us how it is, what they need, and we can make sure that we get their voice heard at the highest levels in Wales.
Amazing. I mean, it is truly an amazing charity, and I think, as a recruiter, when I've spoken to people about Tenovus, that I think pretty much, it's a well-known charity, and everyone always says about the amazing stuff they do, and I think that growth there is just amazing, really, that you've grown so much, but in such like massive ways in different, really groundbreaking things as well.
Yes. And I think we're proud that we're sort of continuing to innovate. So we're not standing still as a charity, but always remembering our roots in that way. What started us off all those years ago, and I often wonder about those 10 businessmen who, sadly have all left us now. I think they'd probably give us the thumbs up and say, yeah, you're doing a good job. I hope they would anyway.
Definitely. Amazing. And then obviously I know that we've spoken about those 10 businessmen, but you're the CEO now. So how did you get there? What tell us your journey to becoming this?
Yeah, well, I have to say this is my dream job. It's absolutely, I feel my whole life this is what it's been leading towards. And so I started off, I'm born and bred in Wales, so I was brought up in Porthcawl, and I have lived all of my adult life as well in South Wales. And I started off in the NHS, actually. That's where I started my career. And I'm from a family of NHS lifers, as I like to call them. They went in and they stayed there, and then they came out when they retired at 60, 65. Whereas I really enjoyed working in the NHS. I did a lot of work in the sort of health promotion field, and primarily working in the South Wales valleys, where there's quite a bit of deprivation and a real need to sort of work with those communities. And out of there, my career grew, and I actually went to work for the Open University for a while, which was amazing as a switch in career. But I worked specifically in the field of health and social care, helping to develop their courses and to teach them as well. So, and then from there, I put my first sort of toe in the water with the charity sector. And my first job was actually Director of Wales of Diabetes UK. Nice. And it was that feeling, I think, when you first come into this sector, of feeling that you've found where you need to be, and I certainly did. And so I've had a number of roles from there, working mainly in sort of long-term health conditions. I've been chief executive of a couple of other organisations, one arthritis, one liver, and now here I am, as I say, in my dream job. So it's been an interesting career and a wide career. But I think that there's something running through it like a stick of rock, really. It's always been that concern about communities, inequalities, helping people to have better lives, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And I from you saying that, from all the other people and kind of CEOs and employees of other charities I've spoken to, it's when they're finding someone, they have to have that real desire and passion for the main aspects, within that you just mentioned within the charity sector. And I think that's how it's a good fit. And I suppose,
yes,
again, you end up in a dream job like you are now. Amazing. And so you've kind of touched on it, really, in terms of kind of your earlier career.
yes.
Obviously you started within the NHS. I suppose, was it quite early on that you thought about moving into the charity sector, and that, again, like you said, that passion for those areas came through quite early?
Yeah, I mean, I think I sort of happened upon it, really, I suppose, and I always thought, if I'm honest, because I've worked in sort of public sector roles, so it was that making that sort of leap across to a different sector. And I think there's always something in you that's sort of saying, oh, but what if I don't like it, or what if it doesn't work, and what am I leaving behind, because while there are lots of challenges in the public sector, there were also some benefits, of course, and of course you say goodbye to those when you move into the voluntary sector. And I guess as well, I was at that stage just thinking about it. I thought, well, I've never actually worked with volunteers. What's that going to be like? So it's that sort of fear of the unknown. So I suppose I was probably a little bit later coming into it than I should have been. Even though I'm nearly 20 years in the sector now, so it's it's a fair time. But absolutely, from the moment I got here, it was that I'm in the right place. I know I'm in the right place.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a lovely feeling, knowing that, and just really settling where you are and just running with it, I suppose.
Completely.
Fab. And what's been your biggest lesson that you've learned as CEO? I know, and like you said, you've been a CEO in a few other organisations, but for Tenovus Cancer Care, what's been your biggest lesson?
Well, I think one of the things I probably learned is that I definitely know I'm a people pleaser. And I like people, and I like
Yeah.
people to like me. And one thing that you have to learn as a CEO is that you can't actually please all the people all the time. We have here, we've got well over 200 staff at Tenovus Cancer Care, and we work with in excess of 1,000 volunteers. Now, they're not all always going to agree with me and what I
No.
do. And so, you have to learn to accept that sometimes you will do things and make decisions and drive things forward that make people not like you quite as much, and I think it's sort of rising above that and accepting that, whilst also understanding that it's not a personal thing. It's just an opinion that people have. And I suppose linked to that, one of the things I remember being told a long time ago is that leaders need followers. Yeah. And so you can't just charge down the road doing things. You have to take people with you.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that I've absolutely learned, sort of in relation to all of that, is when you're doing any sort of change project, anything that's different from what's gone before, you have to keep explaining things to people so that they can understand why you're doing it. What's your rationale? And I think when people listen to the facts and can see that you're not doing it because of any personal gain, you're doing it because it's the right thing for the charity, and it's the right thing for the people that we're here to look after, to represent, to support.
Definitely.
And I try and make all my decisions based on that. What's in the best interest of people affected by cancer? And actually, the answers to those questions then help to drive your decision making. And I think most people, when you explain that, will understand it, even if it doesn't suit them personally.
Yeah, I think that's, really, really good advice for anyone who, um, wants to one day be in this situation, or even when, the people who you said that sometimes aren't as happy with decisions.
Yeah.
If someone's in that situation right now, I think they have to think about, what is good for the charity and what is good
Yes.
for the people who you're helping, I suppose. So
Yeah.
definitely amazing. So, and then on the flip side of that, we can talk about, during your career, but as well, your time as CEO at Tenovus, what's been your proudest moment? What have you, I'm sure there's a couple of things that you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sort of thinking about my career generally, I think sort of getting my first chief exec role,
Yeah.
which was chief executive of a charity, a UK-wide charity called Arthritis Care. And I think just that it was sort of proud and terrifying at the same time. I can't lie. That thing. Am I going to be okay at this? Everyone gets a little bit of imposter syndrome, right? And you sort of worry about, am I going to be good enough, and am I going to do the job? But I'm really proud of what I achieved at that particular charity, not least because I led the charity in quite a high-profile merger with an arthritis research charity.
Okay.
And it's something that other people had tried and failed to do before.
Right.
And it was not, it's probably one of the most difficult and challenging and complex things I've ever done. But actually, we did it. And I say we because it wasn't just me, it was the team. And I'm really proud of that. I mean, I think, what I was able to do was to give both charities a really firm footing for the next level, and to do the much better work, I think, coming together. So I was really proud of that. On the back of that, I was awarded the MBE. And I was, and that was for sort of services to the voluntary sector, sort of generally. And that was a very proud moment for me and my family to have the award, and then to visit Windsor Castle, and to be presented with my MBE by actually the patron of Tenovus Cancer Care, who's Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
that was a lovely thing, because clearly she knows the charity. She and it was wonderful. So that was a really proud moment for me. I think here at Tenovus Cancer Care, you know, we've had some really challenging, like lots of charities over the last few years, challenging things to face. You know, the pandemic, you know, clearly, you know, affected everything that we did and how we did it, our fundraising, our retail. We have 58 shops, you know, so that so all of that really affected. So I think I was proud that I got us through it.
Yeah.
You know, that I took the steps that were not easy steps, but that were necessary steps to keep us afloat, to restructure, to strengthen us, to really focus on, well, what can we do that nobody else can do, or we do better than anyone else? And actually, what are the things that maybe other people, you know, we could leave that to them and we could stop doing it? And that's always a difficult thing to do when you stop doing something, and people, you know, want to preserve the status quo, don't they? So, you know, we did have to make some tough decisions, but, you know, I think we've come out of that stronger, more focused, and, you know, we're just steaming ahead now, which is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that last point, you know, as well, I think through speaking to so many charities myself, the pandemic hit them so hard, and it was really hard to see from myself. You know, I came into it as things were starting, you know, to pick up again. And I think for months and months and months, all I heard was, you know, how difficult it's been for the charity sector. And, you know, it was difficult then having myself approach them. But yeah, it's really starting to turn around now. And I think, you know, what you've said there is a really big achievement. And being so successful from that, and since, you know, like you said earlier on in the call, you're celebrating your 80th year, which is amazing. I know you've got a big extravaganza coming up,
We have,
and really good things to look forward to.
and we have some great news about the extravaganza event, because not only is it going ahead with some amazing acts, but we will have our patron, the Princess Royal, in attendance. So
Oh my gosh,
so
that
she's
is
going to be there.
amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
so we are really, really pleased at that, you know, and what a lovely way for us to celebrate with our volunteers and our staff, and everyone involved with the choirs. We have over 300 of our choristers there performing in front of her. It's going to be amazing. Yes.
Oh yeah, wow. That is unbelievable. That is amazing news. So wow. What a way to finish that one off. Fab. And I know that you kind of mentioned you know, biggest challenges, you know, the pandemic. You know, would you say, you know, that's the biggest challenge you've faced so far, during your time as CEO?
I certainly, since I'm here, yes, I think, you know, and then, you know, actually now we have the cost of living crisis, and clearly that, you know, affects everybody, in terms of perhaps their capacity to give to charities like ours. So so, you know, I think fundraising remains a challenge, and will remain a challenge for lots of different organisations, because, you know, people in Wales are incredibly generous. You know, it's wonderful and humbling, the support that we get. But obviously, you know, your money only goes so far, and some people are having to make very, very tough decisions about, you know, where they spend that. So I think that will be, you know, something that that will continue to be a challenge. I think as well, because of everything that's happened over the last few years, and some of the, you know, decisions that have been made in the NHS in order to keep it going and to protect it, has meant that perhaps some people, you know, have suffered as a result of that. You know, people who are affected by cancer, maybe getting a later diagnosis, or maybe having their treatment stopped or modified, and all of that sort of thing. So what we're seeing is, you know, we've definitely got this increased need now, and, you know, we're thinking, okay, so we have to do more for more people with the same amount of money, you know. So that was always a challenge, and you have to make decisions about, you know, where best to put it. And I suppose as well, you know, we have to be realistic about our workforce as well, you know, that we have to make sure that we, you know, not just recruit the right people, but that we retain them. And, you know, that gets more challenging as perhaps, you know, there are other offers outside the charity sector. So, you know, there are certain specialist skills that command an awful lot more money outside of the charity. So, you know, I think we really have you know, the challenge to emphasize, well, you know, we may not be able to match those salaries and, you know, in some of those more specialist roles. But what we can do is give you a fantastic place to work, and to join a community of people who are so dedicated to what they do. And, you know, you won't ever feel, I don't want to get up today, because, you know, I just get out of bed and I just think I'm going to make a difference. So, you know, well, you don't often get that in some of these other roles, however much money you get.
Definitely agree with that. And it's, I preach it every single day. The charity sector is just something completely different. And you know, you will get a lot of joy out of it just because of what you are doing and how you are giving back. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Amazing. And then kind of looking, you know, back, you know, into the future, what are you excited about? What's coming up that, you know, you think that's going to be amazing for Tenovus?
Okay, well, certainly in the shorter term, our 80th celebrations will be fantastic, and we've got our event, as I said, in St David's Hall on March the 3rd, which is going to be great. But we've also, you know, it's sort of driving forward our strategy. You know, we're really sort of increasing our profile. We're really getting the voice of people heard. I mentioned the All Wales Cancer community, and we're really developing that from, you know, from very small beginnings. Now that's becoming a thriving community of people. So we're really, really looking forward to sort of developing that. And then, you know, there's other work that we're doing specifically around lung health checks. So we know that lung cancer is one of the biggest killers in Wales, and it affects communities in different ways. So if you happen to be in a more deprived area, then, you know, you're much more likely to have lung cancer and also you know, die from it. So so we've been working really, really hard to get lung health checks implemented, and that is going to happen this year. It's a lot of blood, sweat and tears to get that over the line, and we've worked very closely with colleagues from the NHS, you know, from public health, and also from pharmaceutical industry, who are helping us to fund it and to shape it. And so that for me is going to be a really big tick in the box when we actually do get that launch later this year.
Yeah, fab. All sounds amazing. And again, I think that's another, you know, milestone you've tackled. You know, as you said at the start, a few major things. And that's just going to be another great one for you guys.
It will.
And love that. So that we kind of move away from, you know, Tenovus as a whole now. We're looking at kind of tips for other aspiring CEOs out there. You know, what would you say, you know, your 3 top tips are for someone who wanted to join the sector, you know, at any level, and I suppose, you know, or from an administrator, or, you know, just starting off and thinking that is the sector I want to be in. What would your top tips be?
I think the first thing is do your research, because, you know, we talk about the charity sector, don't we, as if it's just sort of like this one thing, and of course it's not, because you know, you have some charities that are absolutely enormous, you know, massive businesses, and then some that are very local and niche and very small staff teams. So I would say to people, first of all, think about, you know, what sort of size of charity you would want to, you know, do you want something that's a bit more corporate, or do you want something that's a bit more local? You know, that would be the one thing. And then linked to that, you know, what about your, you know, what are your values? What's important to you? So, you know, I've always, as I've said, worked in long-term health conditions and that sort of area, where I feel, you know, it's something I'm interested in, and I really want to do that. You know, I personally, you know, would find I would struggle working in international development or something. You know, that's because that's out of my expertise. So I guess it's, you know, pick a cause and then do your research about what charities are out there. So that would be the first thing. I think the second thing is do some volunteering. You know, just see what it's like. I think, you know, we should all do that at some point. You know, have a look at it from that volunteering side, because you will learn so much about the charity if you do that. And anyway, it's such a lovely thing to give back, isn't it? So and then I suppose the final thing I would say is that, you know, within the charity sector, that, you know, there is just this huge variety of roles. So, you know, there are lots of different things you can do. So, you know, there is probably a job for everybody in this sector, of some sort, never mind what your talents and experience are. So, my advice would be, though, don't get pigeonholed. Like if somebody just comes in and sort of says things like, "Oh, I'm just an administrator," and I said, drop the just, because actually you can learn so much in that role that can actually lead you on to other things.
Yeah.
And if I can sort of have a 3A here, and another little tip related to that is, try and put yourself forward for stuff when have, if there's things that people sort of say, there's special projects or opportunities to shadow or anything like that, put your hand up, have a go. You never know, you might really like it and think, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, I completely agree with, that last one. I think in the charity sector especially, I've seen, even some of my own candidates who have kind of gone on to develop within other areas just because they had to help, and then it decided they really, really liked it. And it is such a good way to upskill, spread your skills across a different area, and it just, really just improves so much, because you're helping the charity and you're also, helping yourself, making yourself available for more opportunities. So yeah, definitely, I think that's a really, really good tip. And then moving on to the kind of the second one that you just mentioned about the volunteering. I'm quite vocal on LinkedIn, do my posts, kind of reach out to the community, and I actually did a poll the other day about volunteering, how there was I think it was on the National Lottery Fund, they did kind of a research on how there's communities are looking at volunteering more together, and my poll came back and I think it was like 88% of people said they wanted to volunteer this year. And I think it is so important, whether that is because they've noticed after the pandemic and due to the cost of living that they do just want to give back and really help those who are, less fortunate than some, and just helping others. So I think that's a massive drive this year, especially, that I think we'll see a rise in volunteering roles, which I think is a really lovely thing to do. So hopefully that's the case. Fab, and we've got one more question, which might be a slightly, I don't know, it's a bit of a question. You look back, it's a reflecting question. What advice would you give to your younger self, knowing where you are now? I know that you did mention, taking that leap into the charity sector when it is the unknown. Have you got any advice that you'd give to someone or your younger self?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I suppose I thought I needed to know everything before I sort of like committed, and or would put my hand up, or but actually what I've learned as I've got older is that you don't need to know everything, and it's fine sometimes to say I don't know, and then delegate, and all of that sort of stuff. So I think it's don't feel that you need to know everything before you have a go at something. None of us are the finished article. And so I think that's really important. And I mean, there's a famous book, and the title is Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I think that is great advice, because related to that, I've taken a few leaps of faith in my life about changing sectors, changing roles, putting myself forward for things that I definitely wasn't the finished article. but that's how you learn, and that's how you grow. And I guess what I would have told my younger self when I was feeling the fear is, mostly it's going to be okay. Yeah. I think that's it. It's going to be okay. You might have a few ups and downs, but on the whole, it's going to be okay. And you know what? If you don't like it, there are always other options. Or if it doesn't work for you, or if you fail at something, there's always another way.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Some really good advice there. And it was really, great to get into the ins and outs of your journey, and kind of Tenovus Cancer Care as well. It looks like they got some really exciting things going on, which I can't wait to hopefully be a part of. I know Nadine's mentioned some things to me, and I'm sure, Yoke would love to get a part of it as well. So yeah, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Judi.
Thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed talking to you.